I'm going to tell you guys about a super toxic money belief and general attitude that I used to have and how I personally overcame it. If you're like me and you're from an immigrant background and you grew up in a developing country like Pakistan, like I did, this video will be especially important for you and it'll be quite relatable. So I highly recommend that you watch till the end. So back in uni, I got my very first full-time job. I was working in a call center in one of the big four banks. Now, because of the workload of doing a full-time job, which is obviously 40 hours a week, I decided to do less units when it came to university. So instead of doing 4 units, I did 3 units just to lighten the workload because doing full-time work and full-time uni is extremely hard. So doing one less unit was extremely helpful. Now, because of this, my Opal card changed from concession to adult because I was no longer a full-time student according to their rules, which meant that I had to pay the full price. Now, for those of you who are not sure what this card exactly does, basically it's used for public transport. It's like a debit card. You put money into it and then you can debit the money as you use public transport. It's very simple. Now, when you first set this card up, you have to link your debit or credit card details so the money can be debited and this card can always have a positive balance. Now, one day I checked my banking app and I saw a debit from some unknown merchant. There were absolutely no details, but the transaction itself was only $1. Now, at the time when I saw this, I started to panic because I literally couldn't figure out where I had spent that dollar. I was desperately trying to find out and I was so annoyed that I literally tried to chase the bank up. So in my lunch break, I literally went down to the branch. I walked in there, I stood in line. It was a lunchtime rush, so it was quite busy, waited my turn, and then I finally spoke to the branch manager. And even he couldn't figure out where this $1 had gone, and he tried to explain to me that oftentimes when you set up a direct debit or you set up something from an online source, that merchant may do a debit from your account just to see if the account is legit. So based on his explanation, I saw that and then I kind of calmed down and then I was like, okay, that kind of explains it, and then I went back to work. So in this whole story, what was the outcome of all of this? Well, number one, I wasted 30 minutes of my 30-minute lunch break, basically, walking down to the branch, standing in line, coming back. So I basically missed all of my lunch break. Number two, I couldn't eat properly because obviously all my lunch break was gone. So my performance for work for that whole day was obviously impacted. I wasn't at my best. And lastly, I couldn't sit around and chill with my colleagues and complain about our jobs. But hey, at least I knew where that dollar went. Now, this is very important because this whole story is not about the money, right? I was working full time. I'm living at home with parents. So losing $1 isn't really gonna hurt my back pockets. I'm not gonna go bankrupt over losing $1. And same for you if you're watching this video, losing $1 isn't really gonna hurt you. When I think about this now, it's actually about the psychology of money and the thought processes behind why you do the things you do. For example, I have grown up in an environment where penny pinching is very, very common and accounting for every single cent. If you're from, countries like mine, you may be able to relate to this as well. And knowing that if you paid more than you had to for something, you have to do everything that you can in your power to get that money back and not pay more than you need to, because if you do pay more than you need to, then that means that someone is ripping you off, someone is taking advantage of you, therefore you have to do everything you can to get that money back. And that's exactly what happened, and that is why knowing where that dollar went was so important to me so I can account for everything. But obviously looking at it now, it seems extremely ridiculous and I shouldn't have spent more than a second thinking about it. Now, this is a personal example and it might seem pretty weird, but this can manifest in so many different ways. For example, you buy something for $5, you do tap and go and the person accidentally types in 8 instead of 5 on the EFTPOS machine because 5 and 8 are pretty close together. Anyways, you pay the $8, you get home, then you realize someone has absolutely ripped you off. So what you do is, you go down there, you spend petrol, time and effort and energy to, get that money back and be charged fairly because you don't want to be taken advantage of. Maybe that's deeply rooted in your beliefs and that's how you've grown up, that's how your parents did it. But it's times like this where it starts to become super toxic. Rationally speaking, if I was to ask you, will paying an extra $3 bankrupt you? Obviously, you would say no. $3 isn't going to make a dent in your financial position. I hope. Logically speaking, you know that $3 isn't really going to hurt you that much. However, emotionally, you just can't let somebody take one over you, so that's why you make all the effort to get that money back. And people will oftentimes try to justify this behavior by saying that they're trying to account for all the expenses, they're trying to budget, or they're trying to be charged fairly and it's just fair play. But oftentimes it was never about the money and it was about something much more deeper than that. Now, obviously, I'm not saying if you've been overcharged by hundreds and hundreds of dollars or if you've been scammed that you should let it go and just get over it. But what I am saying is decide where you draw the line. How you grew up has a huge role in how you think about money today, and a lot of people don't really question these things, so it's very important to think about. Because if you don't question this, bad things can happen quite literally. Worrying about these things can literally cost you your mental sanity. You're always going to be checking your bank account, always trying to account for everything, and it's not very good. You're going to have a fear of money and a fear of leaving things unaccounted. It sounds very ridiculous to some people, but it's literally true. I've seen it happen. I was going down that pathway as well. And the most important thing that people seem to forget is time. Time is our most valuable, non-renewable resource, right? You can never get this time back. The time that you spend trying to, chase these things up is oftentimes just not worth it. This was definitely the case for me, and I was heading down that direction, and hopefully some of you guys can relate to this as well. So if you're in this situation, how can you get out of it? Now, I'm not some money coach or some money therapist, so I'll just tell you what I did. I started listening to people that talk about money and psychology together, not just the numbers themselves. The personal finance space is filled with people that only talk about the numbers, they talk about strict budgeting, but very few people actually talk about the psychology side of things as well, and the emotions. And this is where Ramit Sethi comes in, because he is excellent at talking about money and psychology together. I started listening to his podcast called I Will Teach You to Be Rich. He speaks to real people and actual couples and basically breaks down their money psychology and their money decisions. And if you found my little story at the beginning of this video relatable, I highly recommend checking out episode 16. It's called We're Worth $8 Million, but I comparison shop for strawberries. This is the episode that really opened my eyes and made me realize how I would turn out if I kept going down this pathway, and all I can say is this podcast is definitely worth a listen. I'll leave a link in the description. The other thing I did was I took a step back and realized the value of my time. When I was in uni, I wasn't making much money, so it made sense to account for every single dollar and, be very frugal. But now that I'm way past that, university is long gone, it doesn't make sense to hold on to those similar values while you are in the present right now, where the circumstances have changed. You've got to adapt and view things differently. Like back then, going out for food every single week sounded ridiculous and it was a waste of money. But now that, I'm way past that, it's completely affordable and it's just great to do. And of course, this will be different for everyone, and I really recommend that you find out what you enjoy spending money on. So that's how I slowly rewired my brain, and it took a lot of learning and unlearning, but it is completely worth it for your own mental sanity. I genuinely feel a lot better than I did before. If any part of this video resonated with you, I would love to know what you think, and you'll also enjoy this one right here, which talks about why I recently spent $5,000 on my credit card. This is insane. I've never done this before, but I'm glad that I did this. So go check it out. And guys, thank you for being here. I'll see you in the next one. Bye now. For me anyways. And if you found this